Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise. And we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer and listener, thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you. We do bring life-changing business information. Today we do have one of our elders in terms of education, in terms of entrepreneurship, and from the point of view of even indigenous studies and authorship. We have really a powerhouse in my former lecturer, Dr. Joseph Tsonope. He'll introduce himself in greater detail, but I just can't help it. I'm super excited. We're going to touch on a number of ideas around the subjects I've mentioned. And what I'm asking is that please make sure that you subscribe, hit that subscribe button, number one. Number two, also stay in touch in other platforms. So we'd like to keep this program going. And I want to shamelessly plug that we're looking for sponsors. So if there's any corporate out there who's interested in partnering with us, let me shamelessly say, come forward, get in touch with my PA, and let's see what we can arrange. And welcome to the studio, Professor Tsonope. I call you Professor, but I should really be saying Dr. Tsonope.
Just Doctor.
Yes.
Doctor should be enough.
Yes. Just take a moment to share your condensed CV with the viewer as you introduce yourself.
Condensed CV?
Yeah. Just from your head, not from that. Just from
it's going to take a whole lifetime.
No problem.
My name is Joe Tsonope, as you aptly introduced me. Yeah. I hail from Ramotswa, born and bred there. Studied at a number of very interesting institutions, to which I'm especially grateful. Not just my primary schooling education in Ramotswa, but in particular, I want to cite, and with an air of a congratulatory message, my secondary school alma mater, which being a Muedin product tiger, we don't say we've been to secondary school. We say we've been to colleges, especially guys from Muedin College, Muedin College, St. Joseph's College. I say that with an overwhelming amount of pride. Then I proceeded to study at the University of Botswana, where I did my BA in humanities plus a concurrent certificate of education. And I then proceeded, after being selected into the Staff Development Fellowship Program, proceeded to Canada to pursue my master's in applied linguistics. Came back to Botswana, UB, taught for 2 years. Then again, went to the United States of America, Buffalo, New York, State University of New York, where I did my doctorate in linguistics with a minor in computer science. That's in a nutshell.
But you became a teacher of English. That's how you and I met.
Yes.
A lecturer of English.
I lectured in English, then African languages, because linguistics is a very broad, quite a broad domain. After that, I also lectured at a number of universities abroad, including Boston University, Bayreuth University in Germany, what was then West Germany, I've also lectured at State University of Canberra, in Australia, and several other places.
Wow.
Inclusive of supervising masters and doctoral students at different universities. They're just countless. University of Johannesburg, London, Zimbabwe, you name it.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
All right. Tell us about the business component, because you also have a background in business. Tell us about that as we introduce our discussion.
Yes, sir. I don't know whether I breathed this penchant into you at the time you were my student, but
Perhaps you did.
I did venture into real estate, among other businesses. I've also, even as early as this morning, I went to my farm where we produce, my wife and I are into horticulture. Several other farms, several other business interests, including commodities like gold, bullion, coins, silver, and so on.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yes, sir.
As by way of introduction, what attracted you into the business space?
I can't really put my finger on the pulse to answer your question more directly. But let me take you back to what I mentioned from the outset of our conversation, that credit, a lot of credit that I owe to Muedin College, where we were exposed to multidisciplinary styles of education instead of what tends to prevail nowadays, where children are straitjacketed into specific orientations, particular specializations, and so on. You know, we would hop from an advanced mathematics class through a physics class, through a carpentry workshop, all the way to a farm where we produced our own food. That's really where I guess I was brought up in a manner not to be straitjacketed into one particular profession. But it is the diversity of the education that I received which enabled me and opened my eyes to other ventures, including real estate.
Yeah, there was a common phrase associated with a certain Van Rensburg, which was education for production. Are you a beneficiary of that?
No, but I'm a beneficiary of an educational system similar to what Patrick Van Rensburg preached at the time, back in the day at Swaneng School. Our syllabus was, I don't know whether it was through coincidence or what, but virtually identical. Yeah, I think the only component that we lacked at Mueding was construction, but even then we could, we were playing doors in our carpentry shop and so on.
Are you able to tell us when and why we moved from that mode of education as a country?
Mogobe, you didn't mean to put me on the spot because it might offend a few gentle
step on a few toes.
Souls. But let me say that credit to the success that Botswana is in terms of investing the best commodity, majority of which is diamond. Botswana then embarked upon a very rapid transformation process of first ensuring that as many Botswana were exposed to education, they became literate, and so on. So it was almost, it was an unwitting outcome that we ended up diluting, if I may use the word, our education system, going more for specialization because we wanted to ensure that Botswana could run their own businesses, be it governmental and parastatal and what have you. So it was in that process that we perhaps overloaded the education system, stripped it of all the frills and bells and whistles and everything else in order to reach our manpower requirements. I'm not apportioning blame to anyone, but when you suddenly expand any system, be it educational or otherwise, you run the risk of whittling down some of the multidisciplinary aspects of education.
Okay. Let's talk about you specifically. You became an English lecturer, and I was honored and privileged to be one of your students, which is always a joy to recall. What gravitated you towards lecturing in English in particular?
Let me start out with a disclaimer to say whatever English mistakes you make are your own, and I'll take credit for the rest of the good stuff.
Yeah, okay.
When I completed my first degree at the University of Botswana, I was, I guess, owing to performance, as deemed by my lecturers then, drafted onto a staff development program that was, again, rife at the time. Let's ensure that Botswana are trained so that they can man or woman their affairs, even at tertiary education level. So that's what got me sucked into, if I could use the phrase, into academia. And I developed a liking for linguistics, and I pursued it, master's through PhD, and I still, to a large degree, practice it, even post-retirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody, when you say a staff development fellow, may not know what you mean. What was that all about, and how did it work?
Yeah, indeed it worked. It was a very ambitious project started by the university administration at the time to ensure that, in as much as I gave an example of government wanting to get Botswana to run the affairs of governance of the state and so on, hence expanding the educational mandate, the university pursued a similar model, which was to ensure that there were citizen lecturers at university level, because at the time, most lecturers were from abroad.
Okay. And there's an organization you're involved with called the Alumni of University of Botswana Development Trust. The acronym is Alubdev.
Alubdev.
Yes. Tell us about your interest there and your involvement.
Again, where do I start? At the time, you may recall the history of the University of Botswana, how it evolved from what used to be a tripartite institution, University of Botswana, Lesotho, and Swaziland. At some point in time, Lesotho seceded and went their separate way with the campus that was the most developed campus at the time in Roma, Lesotho. And Botswana,
developed by our taxpayers, yeah. The money used to go there.
It was a tripartite arrangement. But then when Lesotho seceded from that arrangement...
thanks to Leabua Jonathan.
It depends on whether you want to be a complimentary or sarcastic, but
Okay.
it worked very well in our favor and in favor of the then Swaziland.
Yes.
Because then we were spurred on to want to develop our institutions at, in our respective countries. So that's really what gave rise to an initiative to ensure that Botswana were trained to become tertiary institution lecturers under a program called Staff Development Fellowship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the mission of this organization of Alubdev?
Again, going down memory lane, at the time when students were marooned in Roma, Lesotho, after Leabua Jonathan, as you have complimented him, decided to annex the Roma campus, all of a sudden there was need for accommodation, to accommodate students, not only those that were returning from their studies in Lesotho, so they could continue in Botswana. So we needed to fundraise, and credit to the first president of Botswana. He made a clarion call for all Botswana and Sundre to contribute whatever small amounts, whether it is a few eggs from chickens, a few cattle from your meraka, your big cattle barons, and so on, to establish the University of Botswana.
With the slogan Motolemo Tukhobo.
Motolemo Tukhobo. And then where Alubdev comes in was there was a committee that was charged with fundraising for construction of student hostels. If I recall well, we fundraised in the order of 3.5 million pula at the time for the construction of hostel. It was a lot. I'm talking about 20 years ago. For the construction of hostel 475, plus an adjoining janitor's residence. And then after the hostel was constructed, we needed to carry on that initiative rather than just stopping it abruptly. And that's how Alubdev...
I want to correct you, said 20 years ago. It's 40 years ago, Richard. In the 80s, right?
Well, you know what? It'll come to you with age.
Yeah. Okay. So now, what current projects are you working on now as Alubdev?
Alubdev has been involved. If you perhaps take a look at the back cover of the book, which was released under the funding sponsorship of Alubdev Trust, looking into marriage practices and...
This is the book you're referring to?
Yes, sir. At the back of that book, there's a short little blurb about what Alubdev is engaged in. We have provided scholarships for students studying at the University of Botswana. We have looked after the Hostel 475 by way of providing maintenance money to the university. We have also built 5 houses in Gaborone West to house young staff development fellows. We've also invested in a variety of options in the business sector.
Tell us about this particular project and your association with Alubdev, how the two are interlinked.
The interlink is fairly obvious. The primary mandate of Alubdev is to propel studies at university level in UB. And one of the projects that we decided to embark upon, was this very book, stemming out of what was a national outcry of, what do they call them, passion killings and all kinds of disorders that were identified within the family sphere, which led to a countrywide study conducted by Ntluyadi Kgosi, formerly House of Chiefs, to find out what the root cause of the problem was. So we were also spurred to carry that on a much more professional level, undertake studies among 20 Botswana communities to look into cultures and processes, as I said, but also to come up with recommendations on how to remedy some of the ills that we find to bedevil the family unit. Yes, sir.
And this is how this thing was born.
That's the exact background.
Okay.
I might just, add a little bit, since you are from a legal perspective, that one of the observations that we made, just mention this in passing, was that even the legal framework of the family institution needs a bit of jacking up and improving. For example, I won't mention names. One justice was able to deem it fit to compensate a complainant about someone wrecking their marriage. 2 years later, another justice, using the same legal framework of Botswana family law, discarded claims for retribution, compensation rather.
Yeah. For marriage wrecking.
Marriage wrecking. So we were just pointing out that in the book, that even the legal, the problems don't just lie with society, our children, the way we bring them up, single-headed households and so on. But even the legal framework also needs to be strengthened. Earlier on, you referred to someone as Mrs. Mogobe. She was Miss somebody else before. There's no law that says Mogobe should have changed her surname.
To adopt the husband's one.
Exactly. So it's just something.
How was it traditionally?
Traditions that are closely allied to us of Bantu origins, say Kalanga, Ndebele, and so on. A female person would inherit or retain their, at the time we used to call it leboko, their totem, and everything else that went with cultural veneration. They never lost that personal identity. Yes.
Okay. And in what way has this particular problem contributed to the M.L.A. in society, including passion killings?
I can't quite ascribe or attribute a cause and effect, but it's just a process of, it's a multiplicity of processes from the time when your great-grandfather, I can bet my bottom Bula, must have been married to a number of women.
Remove the word great.
You're very
my grandfather
yes,
was married to 2 women.
Yes.
Yeah, there was Mapone, and then there was my own grandmother, Mama Sadimoto.
And then if you look at the introductory chapter, when with the advent of Christianity, people like Kgasa of Bakwena was told in order for him to be
A Christian.
baptized, I think it was the word, he was forced to discard his, as they were called, other concubines.
But those were wives.
They were wives. So there's been, you should read the book.
Yeah.
There's been a whole
But there's been a shift from polygamy to monogamy within a space of what, 60 years or less than 60 years?
around say between 60 and 70.
Okay. And that shift, how has it contributed to this chaos that we are seeing? You say you don't want to attribute cause and effect, but it has had an impact. And if so, what is the impact?
To my recollection, in our tradition, we did not have bana baba sinamborabone,
Fatherless children.
fatherless children born out of wedlock, because every eligible female had an opportunity of being married, and therefore the family unit was defined in this really bifurcated extended family type of system.
Yes.
Now, when you all of a sudden shrink that space, you're bound to constrain freedoms of people who would otherwise have been married, freedom of children who would otherwise have not been called bobashi. Yeah, I've never heard of mashi, but
You've heard of bash.
yes.
Yeah, the word that is used in law used to be the word bastard. But even the law realized that this word is too severe, and they changed it to illegitimate children.
Yeah,
So-
again, who's legitimate, who's illegitimate? Yeah. There are a whole host of other cultural, and I'm not just pointing a finger at external influences. Even within our own culture, there was a belief that if you can't bear children or progenies, offsprings, it was an issue that was attributed to the female counterpart. Whereas, you and I know from biology that
Could be you.
we carry the X and Y chromosome. And X is just sitting there waiting for the sperm that can swim swiftly.
Yes.
Yeah. So invariably, it tends to be the male. But females were blamed for not being able to bear children.
At some point, you were UB's faculty head, the head of humanities. You were the dean.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that experience.
Oh, another eye-opener in my life. Having come from the multidisciplinary educational background that I told you about at Mueding and so on, I found it a bit odd that, say, subjects like computer science were relegated to the science faculty. And I said to myself, no, humanities students can actually manipulate a computer. So I introduced, together with fellow deans, a cross-disciplinary, cross-faculty program in computing. And hey presto, humanities students could work around a computer. And they got introduced to programming. And I'm impressed about the setup in your studio because it reminds me of yet another initiative that, together with colleagues, we undertook, which was to establish a media studies program during my term as dean.
How long were you dean for?
For 5 years, sir.
Okay, already you had that impact. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Botswana Society is, I think, to the average person out there, they don't know what that society is about. Perhaps you could define what it is, the Botswana Society, and how you became a chairman.
How I became chairman, I was simply asked by a few colleagues who perhaps thought I could make some impact. But the Botswana Society, which I regret to concur with you that not many Botswana may be aware of what it does, is it conducts and publishes educational material, research material on everything from A up to Z about Botswana, from aardvark to zoology about Botswana. So it's really multidisciplinary. It covers just about anything and every aspect of research material.
Is it an independent?
On Botswana.
Is it a body corporate?
It's a body corporate, sir. Yeah.
And made up of what? Trustees or what?
Made up of trustees. In fact, if I could boast a little bit, Botswana Society is the longest surviving independent body of its nature in this country. Yes, sir.
Apart from publishing, what does it do?
It conducts, it hosts lectures periodically. There's a new program at the time I left the Botswana Society, had already been started on informing members of the public about Botswana, focusing mainly on tours. I know I went on one of the tours, like guided tours. We went to the old prisons in the village, and I was surprised to see and learn about military bunkers that were in use during the time of what was called the Jameson Raid.
Up in Zimbabwe?
You know,
Was the raid took place here or it took place in Salisbury?
This fellow, Jameson, waged a rather unsuccessful attempt at...
So it was an insurrection?
Well,
attempted insurrection.
Attempted insurrection from South Africa at the time when the railway line was being constructed. Other bunkers and proofs or evidence to the resistance that we put up at a place called Crocodile Pools or Ngotwane in Setswana. There are still bunkers.
So we were fighting there?
We were fighting and we fought successfully.
We beat that Jameson guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. So these are these now historical monuments?
These are historical monuments. Definitely the one in Notwani is being conducted under the aegis of the National Museum and Art Gallery. Yeah.
And is it the duty of Botswana Society to preserve these or to bring them to the attention of the public? Or both?
Let me say both. Although perhaps the Botswana Society may not have the necessary capacity to preserve, but at least in terms of annotating and capturing information that indeed in Ramotsa, my home village, we used to smelt iron. There's that capacity.
Wow.
Yep.
What did we do with that iron eventually? It became what?
We turned it into all kinds of tools, plows, axes, and so on.
Right here in Ramotsa?
Right here in Ramotsa. At the time when you fellows were fighting the onslaught of invasions at Itubaruba. Right around the same time.
Okay.
Yep.
What has happened to those skills and that capacity?
Again, one doesn't want to point a finger because most social changes, sociological changes, I should say, a product of a multiplicity of factors. When we became a British protectorate, thanks to whoever was queen at the time.
It's not Victoria.
Yes.
Victoria.
Around the same time, the British Empire imposed upon this time I'll say your great-grandfather and my great-grandfather, they levied a tax called, one of them was hut tax. Then there was another similar form of taxation, which taxation then forced our relatives, our great-grandfathers, to go on migratory job-seeking sojourns in South Africa.
So originally, they started off as an effort to raise tax. I mean, going to the mines wasn't an effort to raise tax to pay the... Is that the reason?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's a huge revelation for me.
Yeah.
And because of that, a lot of these businesses or undertakings were abandoned.
True. Same way as the advent of Christianity moved us away from the skills, the traditional indigenous skills that we had in the area of medicine, pharmacology. Recently, a young Botswana medical doctor discovered that the Taola is not boloi, it's not witchcraft. That there is actually a mathematical basis, similar to the mathematical basis that subserves your device, my device, and so on. Yeah.
That it's science, it's not...
it's not witchcraft, it's not wishy-washy thing.
I think everything that at the time the settlers didn't understand, they labeled. I had one previous guest say, originally witchcraft came about because they were saying, witchcraft is this?
Yeah.
They were amazed.
Yeah.
And now it became witchcraft. And it took a different meaning.
Yeah, but I must also give credit to those who recognize the value of certain medicinal practices that we had at the time, such as tobeja, where I could administer medication on you in order to heal.
I had a car accident in 1995.
Yes.
And I lost my grandmother during that accident.
And
then my dad referred me to a tobeja specialist.
Yeah.
He took a few sticks.
Yes, sir.
He marked on the ground. He pointed around, he walked around. And I was healed.
Yes, sir.
To this day, I'm not able to understand and explain to you why those ankle bones that were twisted became normal, why those rib bones that were broken normalized. But as a result of that activity, I am a beneficiary of tobeja. Live example right here.
I am so pleased to hear that because I've been wondering whether tobeja practice was a form of telemedicine, to use modern terminology, or if it was proof that you can be in two places at the same time.
Could be both.
Yeah. It's not
In a
telepathy. What's I forget the word.
Yeah.
But yes. And
well, it's celestial transportation of some kind. Something really out of our understanding.
Yep. Whether you're riding a broom or not, it's
a different question.
Yeah.
But what this young scholar you're referring to has demonstrated is that the Taola is real and the technology can be replicated.
Yes, sir. Same as the zeros and ones that subserve the software that runs our mobile devices. And I should hasten to add that the direction in which computer science, modern day computer science, is taking, moving from binarity to 4 states, quaternary computing, is very much similar to the interpretation of divining bones. And I should also go on to add further that these 4 states of mathematics, these 4 mathematical states, in a very almost coincidental way, are very similar structurally to the DNA material that made you and I. 4 bases.
Wow.
Or phosphates.
Now, let's go deeper, because you say that there's an area you're exploring.
Yes, sir.
Outside your role as a business person. I'm going to talk about business and real estate momentarily.
Okay.
But let's just start with this. How did your interest get sparked? And what are you doing specifically now in this area of quote-unquote pharmacology or traditional pharmacology?
Yes, sir. First of all, in the area of computing, my grandchildren, 11, 8, and 5, can code your device. I've taught them.
To code?
To code.
At age 11?
Yes, sir. I started at the age of 5, and I wasn't using a computer. Wana dibaha.
Beads
that our grandmothers used to put together as to make a girl's skirt.
Yeah. Only for the front portion. Anyway, let's leave that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some would cover everything.
Yes. Okay.
But yes, others would cover only the sensitive part. Those old ladies employed coding skills. For you to get that pattern, whether it's triangular, horizontal, or whatever, you literally had to count the beads. You couldn't have done so without the benefit of coding. The decoration in your grandma's hut followed certain patterns. That was a product of coding.
Called
Lekhapo.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The games that our children play, whether it's hopscotch and so on, or what's the skipping rope, if you don't read your code well, you're going to get ensnared and get your feet entangled on that rope. So coding is ubiquitous. It's all over. It's around us all the time. But just
I like that word, ubiquitous.
Yeah. Sorry.
It means it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
So how did you then acquire the skills for you to be able to transfer them to your grandchildren?
For my doctorate, during my doctoral program, I took computing as a minor. So I got introduced to computers, and besides even at Mueding, we had also been exposed to mechano, basically the rudiments of mechanics. So these things that have odd bits and ends that fit together just come naturally to me. So of late, I've decided to upgrade them from just basic computing to one of the leading edge frontiers of technology, which is robotics. They enrolled in a program that's called STREAM, where S stands for science, T for technology, R for robotics, E for engineering, A for arts, and then M for mathematics. Yeah.
That creates a wholesome person, in the sense that a wholesome education. Is that the purpose?
Yes, sir. One of should I say observations that I made while I was at during my 8-year sojourn at the Botswana Examinations Council was, even when we do try and place emphasis on science-based subjects, we do that to the neglect and detriment of arts. And I've never understood the logic behind that.
So to create a wholesome and productive and well-rounded person, you need to cover all.
Absolutely. Mr. Mogobe, when I play my guitar, it's somewhere deep inside my brain, I'm actually performing some kind of calculus. It's just represented through minims, quavers, and so on a music scale, but it is calculus.
So it's both art and science, right there.
Yes, sir. You can actually teach calculus to a 5-year-old.
Let's go back to traditional pharmacology. What other discoveries are coming to the fore, and what other activities are you involved in?
After this project with Alubdev, I'm hoping to interest fellow trustees into first scouring the whole country, recording, making records of materials that were used in traditional pharmacology, be it tobeja or Taola, everything. And once we've assembled, call it some form of a dictionary.
You document it.
We documented. My vision is then we would move to the next stage of doing a spectrographic analysis to determine active agents, in
these medicines.
Which would lead us all the way to my ultimate goal, which would be to actually manufacture, synthesize the very active agents in our traditional pharmacology.
What's government's role in all of this, if any?
Government is committed to capturing, recording indigenous knowledge systems. Hence the reason why, what do we call that place now? We're a repository of materials on Botswana. Hence the establishment as an entity within the Ministry of Trade. It hinges on preservation of intellectual property. I forget the code name.
Through SIPA, right?
SIPA, yes. So there is that modicum of commitment on the part of government, but I should also hasten to say, without sounding necessarily critical, that these are areas that need specialists. Mogobe can do so much given his background, and unless and until we professionalize the entire running of government, such as we proposed together with another team that I was working with back in 2004, to say, let's repeal sections 42 and 58 of our national constitution through a referendum, so as to engender professionalism in the appointment of everybody from minister level all the way to
presidential
cleaner level. Yes, sir.
And what do these sections say, just for those who might not know?
42 and 58 basically limits the choice of cabinet ministers, save for the 6 specially appointed ones, from among the elected members of parliament. And my take on it is that
because now both sides suffer because the MPs don't have time for their constituents because they're busy running around ministerial. That's why Budala Ditso normally wipes them out. Number two, on the other hand, there is no professionalism because people are not appointed based on specialization and merit.
Which is where, Mr. Mogobe, what I really admire about your outfit here, recognizing the need for promoting these nuggets of wisdom. If we adopted that mindset as a country, I tell you, we just pull a rug under Japan's feet.
Overnight.
Overnight.
Because it's not as if we don't have the talents and the expertise and the skills.
Yeah.
The people are there, but they are precluded
Exactly.
from setting policy. They are precluded from leadership.
Yeah.
So they just sit around spending their lives whining, year in and out, year out. We're just complaining, blah, 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 government. Whereas the solution is staring us in the face.
Staring at us in the face.
I'll give you an example which irks me a little bit, where we have set up, in the context of the reset agenda, we've set up the Ministry of Entrepreneurship. But do you know that the people at the head, without mentioning any names, are not necessarily entrepreneurs? They're not necessarily don't run successful businesses. They are technocrats.
Yeah.
What is likely to happen? I don't want you to talk politics, but I'm just saying practically.
It's not politics. You've brought in another subject of mine, which I don't think I included on my CV, that together with a number of interested parties, locals, we set up an organization that was called The Business Place to bring up the youth on matters pertaining to business. And I was talking business people, not paper pushers. Sorry to call them that. And the organization ran for quite a number of years with stark, noticeable products of Botswana entrepreneurs. Look, if you want us to go to the moon, Mr. Mogobe,
We can.
You're endangering your life by appointing me to steer the spaceship without requisite training. But if you want us to go to Mars and you say, Tsonope, 3 months, fitness, whatever, exposure
Whichever
to
area, yes.
Yeah, I'll knuckle down and do it.
So we've recently had the Presidential Commission on looking into the Constitution. What efforts, if any, are being undertaken to bring this need for an amendment to the powers that be? And have you played any role in communicating this to the powers that be for this referendum to be created so that we can change, assuming these are entrenched provisions of the Constitution, so that they can be amended?
Well, the report is still with the powers that be for further processing. But believe you me, trust me, I did make my own submission based, among others, on the 2 recommendations that I referred to, which we made back in 2004. I hope these would be part of what goes into the final report, which I pray to heavens that it also be rendered in local languages, because a lawyer colleague of yours recently decried the fact that Botswana don't know their law. And most of it is because it's couched in the type of language that you guys use in course, which even I, as a dictionary writer,
some of it has a little bit of Latin thrown in.
Struggle to fathom. Yeah.
Speaking of dictionary writing, you mentioned it twice. Before I get to entrepreneurship, talk about the late M.L.A. Kgasa, who is actually a distant relative of mine. But how was your association with him, and how did you end up writing a whole dictionary, Setswana English dictionary?
Credit to the late Kgasa, Murulagane Kgasa. He started out with a fairly small, maybe 20, 30 page attempt at Setswana dictionary. And upon completion of my my doctorate, armed with computational skills, having realized that the bulk of language is essentially computational, we got in touch with Kgasa to say, look, let's expand
The project.
The project. Let's, and we did. It took the better part of 10 years, I must say, but we soldiered on and came up with a product.
I'm giving you credit now for my daughter's name, which is Khosigadi. I was scratching my head when she was born, trying to figure out what to call her. And I bought the dictionary and I looked all over. What can capture the essence that I want? Khosigadi was right there, fully explained. Thanks to you. I never gave you the credit, but here you are. Here it is now.
It's never too late.
Yeah. And it causes me to wonder how you managed to get all the Setswana words in one book. I mean, you said it took 10 years, but as computational skills, give us a hint of what it entails.
Well, first it took, it entailed countrywide research to find out in Ngwaketsi you have certain expressions which are not to be had in other parts of the country. If I hadn't gone to Ngwaketsi, I would not have been exposed.
Well, our cousins there say Chono. Now we say Tsono. Meaning the same thing.
Exactly.
Our cousin, the Barolongs.
Yeah. And whereas Baba Ngubar Kisibaka, some of us even shy away from that and we say opportunity. But
Yeah.
Anyway, yes.
Sebaka meaning nothing, very small, which can also mean Sebaka opportunity.
Opportunity.
So, and it's spelled exactly the same way.
Exactly. So not only did we conduct countrywide research across different, you call them dialects, we also scanned printed material, Setswana printed material. You might recall that there used to be a newspaper, was it Cousin of Mechi, that was written in Setswana. Those are some of the inputs.
I remember that newspaper. I don't remember what it's called, but yes. It didn't last.
No, it didn't.
And the reason?
I don't know.
I think there's not enough people who are prepared.
Readership.
Readership. It has not been widespread.
Yeah.
And which makes me wonder what you think about the recent resolution from the House of Chiefs to make Setswana a teaching language. To make it a language of communication in our schools. I think there was a resolution to that effect. It was announced on radio.
Yes, sir. I'm not aware of that resolution, but I'm glad someone took it up because from my experience as a linguist, nothing beats mother tongue education. When you go to Germany, the guys that are working on your Mercedes-Benz speak German. They were trained in German. Same as in all over the world. China. And we lose a lot of our intellect, a lot of our children's commitment to education by first throwing them in the deep end of English. Not that I have a problem with it, but I went to school with chaps who, because of family circumstances, were not able to accede to the same level of command of English that I accessed. My mother was a teacher, so it kind of came as second nature.
Yeah.
But it is not that these guys were dumb. They were a heck of a lot street smarter than I was. And even to this day, they're still, I'm yet to admit, they're still a heck of a lot smarter than I am in certain areas.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship, at last we get where you and I intersect once again.
Yes, sir.
You are a businessman and you have an interest in property. Can you summarize your interests there and tell us why property?
Don't ask me tough questions.
It's my job.
Why property? I was looking for, again, given the Mueding school, Mueding college background of multidisciplinary education, it occurred to me that at the time, 40 years ago, the only viable expansion conduit for Gaborone was in a northerly direction. And my friend, father friend, who launched this book, had already taken the eastern side of the railway.
Let's just be open there.
I credit to him for a lot of things that he has achieved. Then I realized that there was a small strip of land on the western side.
Almost like a corridor, yeah.
Yeah. So I made inquiries and so on, bought the first 10 hectare, put it through the process of surveying, and you know what it entails.
Yeah. Subdivisions and
subdivisions, provision of services, servitudes and so on. Realized, I think, something in the slightly over 100 residential plots. The whole place is now built up. Spun the same money around at a
So you own a township, in other words.
property. I've yet to name it.
Shouldn't it be called the Tsonope Township?
Yeah, but how many Tsonope townships are you going to have? Because I then developed one near Mabaki Estates, and we are currently concluding sales at another one situated not far from the Pakala Gaborone North Police Station.
What's the business model exactly?
I'll share it with you.
Okay, not with the public.
Privately.
Yeah, but the point is that you'd reticulate the place, put all the utilities.
Utilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
How hectic is that? That sounds hectic.
Especially with the advent of COVID, where my financials were on my back to pay, but there were no plots moving. It was very hectic. But fortunately, one had learned a few ropes within the residential industry, within property development, because we were not just limited to Gaborone North, all over the country, including even in South Africa. So it is just that.
You developed some townships there?
Not townships. We bought property in Cape Town, which we just recently offloaded. We invested in school residences at Monash University in Rhodiport. It just takes, you asked me what's the business model, it just takes a bit of gumption, daring,
Guts. and then I can do it attitude.
Exactly. Yeah.
Look, I mean, most of your professor friends thought you're wasting time. What do you tell them now, or what do they tell you now?
No, first, especially Cape Town, they said, so Joe, you're planning to relocate to SA. I said, no, this is investment. Same when I left UB, knowing that I was going to pursue my other business interests, they said, why are you retiring at such a young, tender age? I said, I don't want to be swept out of my office, which is about to happen to you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's happened to a number of them.
A lot.
What can we do to take the scales off people's eyes, just to put that point across that you need to have a side hustle, you need to create income for yourself early? How do we make that message known? Can you help me propagate it?
During my school days, students who used to read a lot were actually given negative names like
Bookworm,
Witatisa Tichara, that type of thing. Unless and until we remove those blinds of our eyes and recognize the need to propel professionalism, the need to, without fear or favor, identify nuggets as you do, and unapologetically propel them forward, rather than go with the majority just for the sake of being politically correct. Unless and until we do that, unless and until we professionalize the running of our entire governance structure, unless and until we
like they did in successful economies, they did that.
Exactly. When we got to the BEC, the Botswana Examinations Council, just at the time basically a government department, no aspersions, negative aspersions cast at government, but they've got their own way of doing things. I took a look at those and I said, what?
No, they're too bureaucratic, professors. I mean, doctor. They're very bureaucratic.
We subjected ourselves to a very thorough, well-nigh, we got frisked in and out to critique the way we ran the organization to a point where...
Because you chaired back Botswana Examination Council
for 8 years.
For 8 years.
We turned it around from a government department to a fully fledged parastatal, compliant with current standards of corporate governance, all the way to the point where we acceded to ISO certification.
I'm thoroughly impressed. But has those changes that are necessary in the curriculum percolated, or shall I say cascaded, down to the system?
Rome was not built in a day, to use an old adage.
Yeah.
You introduce changes systematically, methodically, and these things tend to take a long time. One of the credits to the Ministry of Education, there's a project to improve the lot of the teaching staff throughout the country through a program to professionalize the teaching enterprise. But again, it's going to take time. We need to change people's mindsets from one of being,
subservient.
You haven't quite made it. at Cambridge level, so we're going to shunt you into teaching. You can't produce the best medical doctors, your best astronauts,
with
by
weak
relegating. Yeah, you can't.
You need the best
need
students
the best.
into going to teaching. Yeah.
And I'm hoping to be able to, through interactions with my colleagues in the ministry, to sell the idea of copying, learning, adapting from the best, such as Finland, where to get into the teaching profession is, man,
It's a fight.
it's a serious fight. You'd rather go into engineering or do law or something, these lesser areas of specialization.
Teachers are at the top of the food chain where they belong.
Exactly.
But here we're at the bottom of the totem pole.
Again, through no one's fault. When the lure and luster of the diamond started to shine in Botswana, our government, in its own wisdom, expanded, among other things, provision of education facilities, which means we needed more teachers. So unwittingly, without any malice, we drew into this profession people who should really, some of whom should really never have set their foot in the classroom. I'm sorry to say, but I'm not apologetic about it.
Yeah, sorry without apologizing. Now, let me ask you about brand Tsonope, legacy, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. What can we envisage? What does your crystal ball tell you?
My crystal ball tells me we want citizens of Botswana, residents of Botswana, who believe in themselves. I've nothing wrong, nothing personal against watching stuff on social media, Tom and Jerry and the like. But we have mainani, we have folk tales, we've got idioms, we've got proverbs that helped to mold an ideal person whom we want in Botswana. And one of my, not even crystal ball projects, I've started on it, is to animate mainani abo mutle le tlholwe dimo. Remember Hamitsa Tsilwana?
To discuss his voice.
Yes. But then Tsilwana went the other way, exited. In fact, the meeting we had with my fellow directors on this project, the 11 and 8-year-old, we actually...
Those are fellow directors, yeah.
Yes, sir. We actually tracked this hot Tsilwana down the esophagus and
right through
the exit point.
Yeah.
So we just need to get Botswana to believe in themselves.
Where do you get those? Because my grandmother used to tell me those stories, and I was a big fan of Muta because Muta was always, the hair was always the whitest, the smallest. I always fantasized about becoming like Muta when she used to tell me around the fire these stories.
Yeah.
Where do you document them from, and where can one see the paper form before it goes on screen?
Fortunately, a number of publications are available from bookstores around, locally and even in South Africa. So we've got a lot of starting points. But what do we do in the classroom? We teach you proverbs, idioms, riddles, folk tales, and so on.
And then we talk about Cinderella and Rapunzel.
And then, before we even get to Cinderella and so on, we examine you on the basis of your ability to remember what Mutle and Tolo did. Instead of assessing higher order cognitive skills that make you the well-rounded person that you are. Yeah.
So still, okay, then are we having a Disney type of studio type coming up soon to animate this and to basically monetize it?
I'm so happy to be in your studio because I can see, you said monetize, I can see a lot of pullers from this animation project. Credits to the state for having extended or expanded the mandate of BTV to include 2 new channels. One hopes that such content, local content, would find its way into one of the studios. I don't know whether I'm copying from you or you copied from me. We're going through all the social media channels, YouTube, we're aiming at
all of them.
getting a minimum of 1,000 followers, and we start
from there.
living nicely.
All right, here's a chance to hit me with a question as we get to wrapping up our conversation. Do you have a question for me?
Yes, sir. You trained as a lawyer. Here you are in this illustrious studio.
It's actually a makeshift studio. It's a boardroom. These things you just wrap them up and put them away.
So stop being modest. Let me turn the questions you've been asking me on their head. How did you break mold out of the fairly constrained legal profession to venture into this illustrious palatial building, nice music studio, equally pleasant fellow employees? How did you do it?
I don't think I can answer that in a limited place like this. I'm actually in the process of writing a book, which my plan is to have you to be one of the people who proofread it, now that you told me you did that for Ramadan. So I'd rather keep you in suspense until you read that book, which I think you won't mind proofreading it for me.
Okay, sir.
Have I answered your question for now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Now, here's your chance as we wrap up for you to look at that camera, Dr. Tsonope, and leave that viewer with some uplifting, motivational message as we wrap up.
There's, just as a parting shot, I really would like to encourage Botswana to believe in themselves, to have that level of confidence that they can leave this place, go to Singapore, go anywhere and do better than anybody else in the world. I would like to see a Botswana who has internalized the inner workings of these devices that we are operating now, to the point of going into manufacturing, into designing, into...
There is actually some. I'll tell you more.
Okay.
There's actually some who's manufacturing these in Botswana, and televisions as well. We'll talk about it.
I'll buy one later today.
Yeah.
But Mr. Mogobe, we really need to bootstrap Botswana and make them believe that they are in charge of their destiny. Let's not teach that kid, I'm not pointing a finger at you, the periodic table of elements only for them to regurgitate where helium is, what follows.
I forgot where the elements are. Yeah.
No, lithium is the next. Let him then ask you, the teacher, whether we have lithium deposits in Botswana. Then you tell him, Google it. Because there is an Australian-based company called ASX that is prospecting for lithium deposits in the northwestern part of Botswana. Then ask him, what's your interest in it? Have him say to you, can you loan me, say, 100,000, so I could buy shares on the lithium, ASX, because it's listed internationally.
Yes.
Let Botswana just take charge of their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it has to come from within.
It can come from without.
Yeah, it has to come from within. All we can do is keep encouraging them on shows like that.
Yeah.
Like this. All right. How do they reach you? Do you want to leave them with your contact details?
Yes,
your
sir.
Address? Go ahead and tell them where you can be reached even on social media.
My cell phone number, you know the country code, +267 713 19007. I'll go over that again, 713-19, just so you don't forget it, James Bond, 007.
Yeah.
Email address, tsonope.j@gmail.com, all lowercase. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then on LinkedIn and other things?
LinkedIn, yes, I'll send you those particulars.
No, they want to know. It's just your name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If it's just your name, that's fine. We'll look it up.
Right.
Thank you so much for honoring this invitation. You've done a great job.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.